Good morning. In order to start off our study today, I would like to draw your attention to Philippians chapter 2, and I'm going to be looking at verse 12. Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and to act according to his good purpose. In my travels, as I have the privilege of speaking in different churches and different events, I've become quite concerned about the fact that a lot of people are leaving their salvation in the hands of churches, of institutions, of people. Paul says quite clearly here that we are to work out our own salvation with fear and trembling. How can we allow others to decide if we are going to experience eternal life or not? As we approach the book of Daniel, I want you to approach it with this urgency, that we are working out our salvation with fear and trembling. Now, in the book of Daniel, we are drawn to the prophecy in Daniel 8 verse 14 of a time period that lasted 2,000 years. I'm going to be explaining when this time period started and when it ended, but I want to draw your attention to certain facts. In Daniel chapter 7, we're going to be looking at verse 7 and verse 23. Daniel says this: "After that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a fourth beast." Now, I want you to recall again that Daniel is introducing to us the second scene found in chapter 7. It's almost as if he wants us to take note of what is really going on here. And he introduces us to the fourth beast. He says of this fourth beast, "It was terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns." So we see here that one of the key words that we find about this fourth beast is that it was different. Now, in order to understand who this fourth beast was, we're going to look at verse 23 of the same chapter. The angel gives Daniel this explanation. The fourth beast is a fourth kingdom that will appear on earth. So we know again that this fourth beast represents a kingdom. We already know it's pagan Rome. But then he says this: "It will be different from all the other kingdoms and will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it." So we see that the key word here that we need to pick up on is that this fourth beast is different from the beast that came before. And what made this beast different? You will recall in our previous studies that when we looked at Babylon, Medo-Persia and Greece, the kings exercised one power when it came to the spiritual affairs of their kingdom and the political affairs. They could use their political power to enforce religious worship. That is the interesting thing about the first three beasts. But notice that the fourth beast is different. And it's interesting that we pick up that during this beast's ruling, during pagan Rome, something happens. Caesar allows people to govern themselves spiritually, but they had to pay tribute to him when it came to his political power. You will recall how that when the Pharisees and Sadducees wanted to deal with Christ, they went to Pilate. Pilate actually told them, "Go and do with him according to your customs," showing right there that the spiritual power that people had, they could exercise to do what they wanted to do. This is what pagan Rome allowed. But when it came to the political implementation of rules, that was still within the hands of Caesar. So I want you to notice here that in the pagan Roman Empire, we have the breakup of one power being broken up into two powers. Now, we notice, and I want to read now, Daniel chapter 7, verse 24. The angel goes on further to say, the 10 horns that come out of the pagan Roman Empire are 10 kingdoms. And I want you to notice that we have here the introduction of nations, the introduction of more than one ruling power. Now, the interesting thing about this little horn is that it rises up. It says there, after them another king will arise. And then this word again, different from all the other kingdoms, and will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. So we see that this little horn, even though it is a separate kingdom, has an influence that is over the whole world. The interesting thing that I want to draw your attention to in closing off here is that this little horn is different in the sense that it does again what the pagan Roman Empire did. It exercises political as well as spiritual power. There is the difference between the two, but this one claims to be in control of both. As you look around you, dear friends, I want you to take note of what powers exercise political power to enforce spiritual worship. This is a key principle in understanding this little horn. May God help us to see the deception that's going on around us. May we see truth today, and may truth set us free.